This video was sponsored by Squarespace. I'd like to tell you guys a story about one time I was going for a job interview. It was quite a stressful job interview because it was for a physical challenge and something that I was quite excited for. It would later transpire that it actually wasn't a legitimate job, but rather a con by a weird, pervy internet guy. But that's really besides the point and probably a story for another time. Point is, I was preparing for the interview. I was eating lunch with my girlfriend, now wife, in preparation, feeling really anxious, when I realized that I could turn that anxiety into a kind of excitement by listening to music that got me amped up. Specifically, I listened to some music by Stan Bush, The Touch, which is the theme tune that plays when Optimus Prime kicks ass and takes on Megatron in Transformers the movie, and it was pretty much the soundtrack to my childhood. You got the touch. And that was enough to get me amped up. And I realized that instead of trying to calm myself down with like breathing techniques and meditation, instead of trying to fight that anxiety, that excitation, what I could do instead was to turn it into a more excited energy and a more amped up energy. And I coined this expression that I now use regularly whenever I'm feeling stressed about something like that, which is to get psyched up, not psyched out. And I tweeted this at the time on Twitter. I went on and I said, try listening to Stan Bush music the next time that you're feeling anxious about an event or an interview. And I got a response from Stan Bush himself. He tweeted me back and said, now you've got the touch, Adam. And that was like life highlight right there. I felt like I was Optimus Prime. Of course, I then found out that he actually tweets that to pretty much anyone who mentions him on Twitter, which only slightly diminished that moment for me. But the point is that getting psyched up rather than psyched out has been a mantra that I've used consistently, and since studying psychology and researching the concept, turns out it might actually have some real merit and some actual, science behind it. Essentially, we can see this as an example of arousal regulation, and this is something that athletes will regularly do before competition in order to get themselves into the right state, to get their nervous system into the right state. That could mean calming themselves down if they're over anxious, or it could mean amping themselves up. But either way, it's the conscious manipulation of this state, which is what we call arousal regulation. And this is something to consider when you're going into any event, because too much arousal is negative. You start to panic, your prefrontal cortex shuts down, you can't think straight. But not enough is also not great, because now you're lethargic, you're tired, you can't get yourself motivated, you can't respond as quickly. Essentially, being stressed is a superpower, as stated in that famous Doctor Who clip, because it narrows your vision, it increases your focus, it gets the blood flowing where it's needed, it makes you physically stronger and dulls your sense of pain. So stress and anxiety can actually be a positive thing. You just have to tap into that.
Right now, you could run faster and you could fight harder. You could jump higher than ever in your life. And you are so alert, it's like you can slow down time. What's wrong with scared? Scared is a superpower. It's your superpower. There is danger in this room, and guess what? It's you. You feel it?
And this touches on another concept from psychology, stress reappraisal. Basically, looking at those stress signals that you're getting and then reappraising them, reinterpreting them as positive rather than negative. Because the studies show that part of the reason that stress is so negative for us is because we think it's negative. But when you view that stress in a positive light, it actually becomes much more positive, and you can actually then tap into it. And this has been shown to be beneficial for performance and much more. So this is another reason that this might work. And finally, we can view this as an example of excitation transfer. And what that basically means is that you're arousing yourself, in a physiological sense. Not getting aroused, that won't help you in most situations. You're arousing yourself in a physiological sense, getting yourself excited and worked up, but then you're transferring that arousal to a different area, to a different activity. This has been shown to work, so you can arouse yourself in one way and then take that into the following activity. And the best way to do this is through music. And of course, the kind of music, not only that has the best tempo for elevating your nervous system, your heart rate, etc., but also one that you find inspiring and encouraging, because music enjoyment is subjective. That's going to get you amped up, psyched up, not psyched out. So yeah, there's lots of reasons this works, and it's worked well for me. So the next time you're going into something feeling anxious, well, then instead of worrying about that, see it as a potential good thing. And instead of trying to fight it, because that's the thing, it's so hard to force an emotion back down. If you're really nervous, trying to calm yourself down just becomes an extra thing to stress about, and it's actually really hard to do. Whereas riding that wave and using that to become more productive, well, that works for me. So, psyched up, not psyched out. Hope that's useful. Okay, so what happens though if you're trying to become psyched up, not psyched out, but you still can't do that and you find yourself just too anxious and too jumped up and you're making mistakes as a result? Well, if we're using arousal regulation, then the thing we want to do at this point is obviously just to try and calm ourselves back down through any means necessary. And you can do this with things like breathing techniques, but the option that I'm going to recommend instead is something else that kind of I stumbled upon that's been really effective for me, and in doing further reading has actually turned out to be something potentially quite logical and sound. So essentially, I find that I often perform best when I'm actually not fully concentrating on the task. This goes against pretty much everything that you might intuitively think. It also goes against certain aspects of sports psychology. It's called dual task interference, the idea being that if you're doing two things at once, then you're multitasking, you're not going to do as well as if you do one thing at a time. But there's a kind of caveat to this, which is automaticity. Automaticity being the state that you reach once something becomes so automatic for you that you don't really need to think about it. Like driving, you don't think about changing gear, you don't think about checking your blind spots, your body does it all automatically. That's just because you've done it so often that it has reached this state of automaticity. Likewise, when you're eating breakfast, you don't have to control your hand up to your mouth and focus really hard. You can hold a conversation at the same time. In those sorts of scenarios, there's some studies to suggest that actually distracting yourself with something like a conversation or maybe a really simple mental task like counting can take your mind off of the activity to the extent you actually perform better if you have some kind of anxiety. If you're having performance anxiety, if you're finding yourself overly aroused by the situation, again, physiologically aroused by the situation, then distracting yourself from that situation can actually be a potentially really valuable way to calm yourself back down slightly so that you can actually get the work done properly. I liken this a little bit to a flow state. So in flow states I think have been overly exaggerated, their effectiveness. A flow state is when you're 100% focused on a task. Then people tend to throw around terms like temporal hypofrontality, meaning that your prefrontal cortex shuts down. That's not actually what's going on here specifically. Rather, it's just that the particular neural pathways utilized in that activity are the only ones firing by and large, so that you're not being distracted, your attention isn't being pulled in different directions. Particularly, you don't have that self-nagging doubt talk that can actually impair your performance and give you the yips. Unfortunately, I think flow states have been kind of turned into this cure-all for every possible ailment. It's become a bit of a grift. The flow state isn't really just one state, it's just doing anything with complete focus. But in this scenario, in this alternate scenario, you're not actually shutting down all that competing neural activity, you're separating it. So you're allowing your body to actively perform the job whilst your brain is busy doing something else, meaning that you're not overthinking it. Now, this isn't going to work in every single scenario. There are certain tasks and activities that do require more mental focus, and in this scenario, you're going to experience that dual task interference. Likewise, this might also have something to do with the type of brain you've got in the first place. You may have heard in one of my previous videos about the dichotomy of the warrior versus the worrier. I'm saying that carefully because warrior and worrier sound very similar, but the warrior is someone who has relatively low mental activity. Think of your typical jock, but then they perform really well under pressure because when that activity, when their arousal is increased, it's not increased too high. Whereas the worrier, also called the strategist, is someone who has more high-level neural activity all the time. They're more aroused, more active at all times. And that means that they perform well when they're, being creative at the desk. But when they're put under pressure, that arousal exceeds the threshold where it's useful and they become a nervous wreck. So perhaps if you're the worrier type, which I certainly am, I get nervous when someone asks me my name and I'm not expecting it and can't remember it. If you're the same type like that, then you might be someone who benefits more from a distraction task. And yeah, studies show that actually under certain circumstances and depending on the activity and the distraction task, this can be useful. So what I'd recommend doing if you want to experiment with this yourself is playing something like a shmup, a shoot 'em up, or a bullet hell game, something where you need, really intense mental focus, and try just counting at the same time, not doing some kind of mental arithmetic, just counting. And if you can do that whilst playing and almost zone out of the game, you may find that your performance increases. And if it does, then you can also use this technique in similar scenarios in your real life or in sports. Again, it won't be for everyone, it won't be in every scenario, but it's something that I found useful, and it's something that you might want to try. And I refer to this in my head as Auto Adam. Auto Adam has his whole own life, and sometimes he gets him into trouble, but he's also pretty useful for other scenarios. So yeah, give that a try and combine it with the other arousal regulation methods that I discussed in the first half of this video. So if you want to try implementing those, then if you want to get psyched up instead of psyched out, if you want to create that arousal and transfer it to other tasks, then try riding the wave of activity and maybe listening to some music that'll get you really amped up and in the mood. So yeah, those are some techniques you can try that have links to sports psychology that have been very effective for me and others I've shared them with. Give them a go, and I'd love to know in the comments down below if you do find them useful. Either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this. If you found it interesting and you like combining brain training and sports psychology with other aspects of physical performance, things like strength, mobility, speed, endurance, then you might like my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0. It goes into massive depth in all this nerdy stuff. It's 85 plus pages with over 2 hours of instructional video. The link is in the description down below. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and bye for now. By the way, guys, this video was brought to you by Squarespace. So Squarespace is a website building platform that makes it extremely easy for anybody to build their own website. It has a powerful drag and drop system that allows you to simply take the elements you want and arrange them on the page how you like them. You can build off of a huge selection of ready-made templates that all look highly professional, modern and attractive, and then have your website up and running within minutes. That's not an exaggeration. From there, you can then edit it as much as you like, make blog posts, etc. And it has all the tools and features you could possibly need to then build it out as far as you want to go. This makes it perfect for absolute beginners with no coding experience, but also means it's suitable for big businesses, which is why some of the top brands on the web are happy to use Squarespace to power their businesses. Among the many features you get access to, you get things like advanced formatting tools for creating beautiful blog posts and posting them or scheduling them, social media integration, fully featured commenting system with threaded comments, replies and likes, member management, search engine optimization, analytics, appointment scheduling so you can make appointments and run a service that way. You've got client invoicing, which makes it easier for you to manage your bills and to earn money directly from your website. Members only gated content as another form of revenue generation, and of course all of the e-commerce features you could possibly want as well, so you can sell products directly from your website and make money that way. You can then expand the features of your website even further through the wide range of plugins from the community and from Squarespace themselves, and this will allow you to do things like inventory management, global shipping, etc, etc. Really, the sky is the limit with Squarespace, and they make it as simple and easy as possible for anyone to build their own website. If you want to learn more, then go to squarespace.com, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Bioneer for 10% off your first website or domain. Thanks again to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Thanks to you guys, and bye for now.